Blog Talk Radio.
Mi chiamo Afurakani Afuraitkaitnit. Neye AMANSEM da medinde ojirapo kwesi rana himpata akan. Akamumai maruka etipi mu ojirapo. Ojiramai mu. Greetings to all Afurakani Afuraitkaitnit people, meaning Africans, black people. Today is AMANSEM Day, Affairs of the Nation Day. My name is Ojirapo Kwesi Radnehimpata Akan. Ojirapo of the Akwamu Nation in North America. Within Ojirama, the purified nation, Afurakani Afuraitkaitnit, people in the Western Hemisphere. Yet I say we thank you once again for tuning into the broadcast. We're opening up the chat room right now. If you have any questions or comments, and you like to interact in the chat room, you must log in as a user in order to interact. If you have any questions or comments on the phone line, simply hit the number 1 so that we can see that your hand is raised. We're doing this rebroadcast because of the technical issues that we had on the broadcast last night. Technical issues with Blog Talk with their console, and there was a problem with the sound. So that particular broadcast had to be deleted. And so we're just going to redo the broadcast once again. So typically for those who are new to the broadcast, we have 4 broadcasts on a weekly basis. We have Akanfo Nanasom, Ancient Authentic Akan, Ancestral Religion, on Joda, on Banedites, where we deal specifically with the Akan expression of Nanasom, of Ancestral Religion. First and foremost, because we are Akan. Secondly, because of the misinformation being propagated regarding Akan ancestral religion, culture, cosmology, and so forth, not only from individuals in the Western Hemisphere, but also from those individuals on the continent of Afuraikai, Africa, who have been corrupted with white pseudo-religion, such as Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, and so forth, and they're fictional cartoon characters who never existed of any form or of any race whatsoever, including the fictional cartoon characters Jesus, Yeshua, Isa, Abraham, Isaac, Ishmael, Jacob, Esau, Solomon, Sheba, Menelik, Moses, Aaron, Buddha, Brahman, Allah, Yahweh, Muhammad, all of these fictional cartoon characters who never existed. When our people get infected with these pseudo-fake religions, then their infections manifest in their presentation of Akan ancestral religion. So we deal with ancient, authentic Akan ancestral religion, which deals with our origins in ancient Kanat, the Kan land, ancient Nubia, first land, foremost land, land of the beginning, and so forth. Our people migrated from ancient Kanat after the fall of ancient Kemet and Kanat, Egypt and Nubia. 2,000 years ago, we migrated further west, reestablished the Kanat Empire, the Akan Empire in the western part of the continent. A couple of thousand years ago, centuries later, because of invasions, some of our people migrated further south towards the regions of contemporary Ivory Coast and Republic of Ghana. Today, we've migrated to those regions hundreds of years ago, reestablished Akana civilization in those regions. And then, hundreds of years after that, some of our people were forced into North, Central, South America, the Caribbean, and Europe during the Musuo-Kessier, the Great Perversity, the enslavement era, and this is how we ended up in the Western Hemisphere. However, we maintained our ancestral religious traditions, practices. Thus, Akan ancestral religion in Suriname and South America is called Winti, from the Akan term Queen T. Akan ancestral religion is called Obia in Jamaica, from the Akan term Obai. Akan ancestral religion is called Hoodoo in North America, in the United States, from the Akan term Undu, which means medicine from roots, trees, plant life. It also means to become heavy with the spirit through spirit possession, spirit communication. We also find the same terms in the language of ancient Kanit and Kemet. Udu meaning plant life, medicine from plant life, and so forth. Undu also meaning to become heavy with regard to the spirit, spirit possession, spirit communication. Undu is also the term for the offerings placed on the shrines in ancient Kemet, and the shrine itself is called the Undu Shrine, giving those offerings or giving the Undu or the hoodoo to the spirits of the deities and ancestral spirits and so forth. We also find that the term Undu is a title of ancient KAMIT or Nubia. The people also called the Undu people. So these terms we have been using for thousands of years from ancient Kanat through West Afuraitkaitnit into the United States, North America, and the hoodoo tradition. So we deal with ancient, authentic Akan ancestral religion on Jodan Monday nights. On Abinada Tuesday nights, we have Ojida, which means purification. We deal with ancestral religion in general, not just the Akan expression, but ancestral religion in general and how it impacts every aspect of our lives as Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people. Ancestral religion, in essence, is defined as the ritual incorporation of divine law and the ritual restoration of divine balance. That means through ritual we incorporate those things, objects, deeds, and entities we need to incorporate in order to harmonize our thoughts, intentions, and actions with divine order. And through ritual, we reject those things, objects, deeds, and entities we need to reject in order to restore balance to our thoughts, intentions, and actions, and thus realign ourselves with divine order. So the ritual incorporation of divine law and the ritual restoration of divine balance, these are the expansive and contractive poles of ancestral religion. We state that Ojida, purification, operationalizes Nanasom. Purification operationalizes our practice of ritually incorporating law and ritually restoring balance. Our culture as Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people is the divine acceptance, the law, love of order, and the divine rejection, the hatred, the repulsion of disorder and its purveyors. We seek to align every thought, intention, and action with divine order every moment of every day. When we make legitimate mistakes in the process, then we engage the ritual process to incorporate law and restore balance so that we can get back on track with executing our function in creation while aligning every thought, intention, and action with divine order every moment of every day. This is how ancestral religion impacts every aspect of our lives. So we deal with the purification, Ojida, purification of concepts, cosmology, culture, ritual practices, and so forth on the Ojida broadcast. It was through ancestral religion, purification, that our people here in the Western Hemisphere maintained our ancestral religious practices, learned from the deities and ancestral spirits the best means by which to wage war against the whites and their offspring through taking up metal armaments, to wage a physical war against the whites and their offspring, as well as utilizing chemical and biological warfare, root work being the precedent established for chemical and biological warfare in the Western Hemisphere. So through ancestral religious practice, we learned the best means by which to wage war against the whites and their offspring and force the end of enslavement in the Western Hemisphere through incessant wars that we waged against the whites and their offspring. So we deal with that on Abinanda Tuesday nights on the Ojida broadcast. On Akuda Wednesday night, we have Egua Marketplace, where we showcase Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit businesses, organizations, and institutions, those who have maintained their ancestral religious values in the context of their service to the Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit community. So we showcase the number of businesses, organizations, and institutions, having people placing the businesses on the website, dealing with the Okom economic development model, which is an approach to economic development rooted in our ancestral religious values. So this is what we deal with on the Egua Marketplace broadcast. Give me 1 second. We want to make a quick adjustment. Okay, so on Yalda, Thursday night, also called Yada Abada, we have AMANSEM Affairs of the Nation, which is the broadcast we did last night, that we're redoing tonight. On that broadcast, AMANSEM means Affairs of the Nation. We deal with specific issues that confront us as an Oman, as a nation, specifically as Ojidaman, the purified nation, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people in the Western Hemisphere. We understand the proper definition of what an Oman or a nation is. An Oman or a nation is a living, breathing entity Just like you have an organ, which is a living, breathing entity, the cells of the organ are the children of that organal structure. They support the functions of that organ while they also interface with one another. We are cells of an organal structure. That is what an Oman or a nation is. It is a living, breathing entity governed by specific forces in creation. When we interface with one another harmoniously and support the functions of that organal structure of which we are a component part of cells, then we're operating harmoniously within that Oman, within the nation. Our people were forced into the Western Hemisphere. However, at some point, we were directed by our ancestresses and ancestors to coalesce in a specific region of this area of the Earth Mother's body here in the Western Hemisphere to interface with the unique expression of Asaseafu and Asasiya, the Earth Mother divinities in this region of their body, interface with the unique expression, manifestation of the Abosom, the Orisha, the Vodou, the deities as they manifest in this region of the Earth Mother body and so forth, deal with the plant life, animal life, mineral life, for food as well as medicine, as well as the spirit totems of plant life, animal life, and mineral life as they manifest in this region of the Earth Mother's body, to blend ancestral blood circles in this region and bring ancestresses and ancestors back into the world through these blended ancestral blood circles in this region of the Western Hemisphere of the Earth Mother's body. So through this confluence of activity, we have forged a locative identity, a unique expression of Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit culture, and that includes ritual practice and so forth, born of our interfacing in this region and blending ancestral blood circles. Therefore, we have a unique expression of ancestral religious practice, a unique expression of culture, a unique approach to solving our problems that confront us as an Oman, as a nation, specifically as Ojiraman, the purified nation, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people in the Western Hemisphere. So AMANSEM affairs of the nation deals specifically with those kinds of issues that are confronting us that we need to solve. And of course, we deal with Amaniye Nationism, which is the purification of nationalism. It is an approach to nation building, restoration, rooted in our ancestral religious values. And of course, we have our Ojiraman Afashe, our Ojiraman Conference, third annual, coming up this Awusida, this Sunday, June 24th, in Washington, D.C. It is a free event, all-day event, open to Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people, African black people only. We're dealing with Amaniye Nationism, the purification of nationalism. We will have presenters, myself, also Dr. Iya Ajawa will be presenting on educational systems within Ojiraman, the purified nation. Wakili Oyinola will be dealing with plant-based medicine and mineral-based medicine, establishing institutions of healing within the purified nation and so forth. We will be dealing with the pedigree of resolutionary nationism, Ojiraman Anata, that philosophical foundation of nation building rooted in our ancestral religious values. This is what our conference is dealing with. So we'll have presentations throughout the day. We will have our vendors, our Egua marketplace vendors, including a vegan food vendor, throughout the day and so forth. So it's a family event for Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people only. It is a free event. Registration is free. Registration is required. You can go to our page, our Ojiraman Afashe page on Facebook, on our website. You'll get the link to register. So that is coming up this Sunday, Awusida, June 24th. Doors open at 11:30 a.m. The program starts at 12 p.m. We'll be going from 12 to 5 on that day. Okay. So we want to get that information out. For those who came in a little bit late, if you have any questions or comments, you can you must log in as a user in order to interact in the chat room. If you have any questions or comments on the phone line, simply hit the number 1 so that we can see that your hand is raised. So the topic for tonight's broadcast is Ba, or what we call BAITI and BAITI, the origin and nature of twin flame unions, marriage, and nationism. We are in the midst of the summer solstice. Of course, this is the hottest time of the year. The sun is at its highest point, reaching its highest point in that arc of the sky, the longest time of the year as far as daylight hours are concerned and so forth, over 15 hours of sunlight, 9 hours of darkness and so forth. This is that period of the full flowering of the quote-unquote plant life, the full flowering of our activities, our labor, as we have our New Year's celebration at the Atemet Equinox, the fall equinox in the Akan tradition, and inclusive of Akan tradition in North America, in Akwamu Mine, Amadukai Tifimu, the Akwamu Nation in North America. Our Akan New Year is at the autumn equinox. September 22nd was the day of the equinox, the first day of fall. That was also the beginning of our New Year of 13,018. That is the end of the warm cycle, but it's also, and it is the harvest cycle, but it's also the beginning of the seeding cycle. You're planting that seed, sowing that seed, and then for the next 3 months, the germination process takes place, the rooting process takes place, the roots go down deep into the darkness, into the soil. You hit the winter solstice, the darkest time of the year, the coolest time of the year, and then those sprouts begin to rise, still underground, but then at the equinox in the spring, the sprouts break through the surface of the earth and manifest for the first time in the full light of the sun, rising up and so forth. That is the springtime, renewal, resurrection, and so forth. That is around March 20th, 21st, and of course we have our Etchi Sign Ancestral Religious Reversion Conference at that time. And then you get to the summer solstice, the highest point in the sky. That is the full flowering of the plant. That's the full manifestation of the work that we have been, we seeded and germinated and rooted and sprouted during this period of the year. And now it's fully flowering and fully manifesting. And now we can utilize that energy, that solar fire power, to execute our function and get the work done and affect the community in a positive capacity. And this is why we have Ujiraman Afashia Ujiraman conference around the summer solstice. Each year, this is our third annual conference dealing with the nation building from a purified perspective, rooted in our ancestral religious values. So this is the summer solstice, the second day of the summer solstice. It is a good time, auspicious time to deal with this notion of what is called often twin flames, and we give a proper definition. Marriage is the foundation of strong families. Of course, the strong male and strong female, Afurakani man, Afuraitkaitnit woman. When we purify ourselves, then we become pillars that once we come together and we unite and so forth in a harmonious union, marriage that becomes the foundation for a strong relationship, of course, foundation for a strong family. The strong families are the foundation for a strong Oman, a strong nation, a nation that is sovereign, independent, and secure in its sovereignty. So this whole notion of twin flames or proper unions, marriage, and nationism is very key. There's a great deal of misinformation being propagated regarding this definition of what a twin flame is, propagated by the whites and their offspring, because they have no capacity to properly define where this comes from, what it is, why it has that designation, and so forth. When the whites and their offspring invaded ancient KAMIT and KANAT, the Greeks and Romans and whites prior to that, before they called themselves Greeks and Romans and so forth, when they invaded our centers of civilization, that's when they learned about the existence of deities. They have no capacity to communicate with any divinity. No deity has ever or will ever possess them nor communicate with them because they are spirits of disorder. So they have no capacity to interface with the forces of nature. They are repulsed by the forces in nature. It's no different than the cancerous cells within the body. They are disfigured and out of harmony with the other cells. So the result is your immune system and lymphatic system isolates those disfigured, dysfunctional cells, kills them, and expels them from the body. because they are not in harmony with the other cells. The whites and their offspring are the cancerous cells within the body of black humanity. They have no capacity to harmonize with the cultured, balanced cells and so forth, the healthy cells. So they are slated for eradication without exception. These are spirits of disorder. They incarnate as spirits of disorder. So they have no capacity to align themselves with the forces in creation. It's no different than two magnets on the table with the same polarities facing. They repel one another. The whites and the offspring are spirits of disorder without exception. Therefore, their spirits are repulsive to the spirits of order, which the deities are. The forces in nature are the embodiments of divine order in creation. They regulate order in creation. They are the organs within the great divine body of the great mother and great father supreme being. So Amunet and Amen are the great mother and great father supreme beings. Within their great divine body are smaller beings, which are organs, which are the forces in nature that regulate order within the great divine body. And within the body of those organs are the cells, that's plant life, animal life, mineral life, and Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, human life. We are the cells within the organs. Our parent organs are the deities, the Abosom, the Orisha, the Vodou, the NTORO, Ms. Norma Netaru, Netertu. And when we serve our parent organs, our parent deities, as cells serving the organs, when your cells serve their parent organ, they sell you the great body at the same time. When we serve the organs, the deities that govern us and our energy complexes, we are serving the organs within the great divine body, but as cells, we are serving the great divine body at the same time. The whites and their offspring are disfigured, cancerous, dysfunctional cells within the body. They have a temporal existence. They are slated for eradication. So they are repulsive. They have no capacity to communicate with the divinities, the forces in nature. They have no capacity to be possessed by the forces in nature, so they cannot align with them. They cannot learn about the properties of the deities and their functioning in creation. So they have no capacity to properly define a balanced relationship. They don't understand the origin of these concepts, and therefore all of these foolish doctrines and certifications and videos and books and this entire industry revolving around twin flames and so forth is full of misinformation. When the Greeks invaded ancient Kemet and the Romans and so forth, and later Arabs and so forth, and through Greek perverse culture and later Gnosticism and Hermeticism and Kabbalism and so forth, they learned specific things that they attempted to imitate from ancient Kemet. Of course, you see the Greeks changing their clothing and changing their names and building temples in direct imitation of our people and dressing as our people and creating sculptures and making white images and calling these images Isis and Osiris, the corruption of Set and Osar and the various divinities and so forth, imitating every aspect of the culture when they invaded Kemet, including the cosmology. But of course, as spirits of disorder, they would corrupt what they saw, perceived, what they gleaned, that they would deliberately corrupt that information. They don't have the capacity to properly understand it, but of course they're going to deliberately corrupt because they sought to corrupt our tradition. Therefore, when they learned about this notion of what a twin flame is, they corrupted that notion, and then when they talk about the origin of the twin flame theory, they don't have any answers. The best they can do is go back to Plato, and they're reading, the information in the dialogues and so forth, and they're talking about Aristophanes, and he's talking about originally human beings had 2 heads and 4 arms and 4 legs and round bodies, and Zeus came to split them in half, and they had 1 head and 2 arms and 2 legs, and they would forever be separated and looking for their other half and so forth, and that was done by the fictional cartoon character Zeus. But of course, when you look at that story in the Greek text, you also find that they're promoting dissexuality, homosexuality, because they state that the highest level of the union of the other half is when you find you're a male and you find your other male half and you live with your other male half and love your other male half. The female half is only necessary for procreation, but the highest level of development is uniting with the male that's your other half, which is insanity, perversity, faggotry, lesbianism, perversity. That is the nature of the whites and their offspring. So that's what they're actually promoting, pure stupidity. You look in the Hermetic text and you look in the Kabbalah and the Gnostic texts and so forth, and they talk about the primordial man being like a hermaphrodite and so forth, and then the primordial scission that split the unity into a duality, and the duality is quote unquote dichotomous and in conflict, and it needs to seek a unity once again. Pure foolishness. The Kabbalah is foolishness. The Hermetic texts are foolishness. The Gnostic texts are foolishness. The same is true of Hinduism. Misinformation coming out of Hinduism is foolishness, as well as Buddhism, as well as Jainism, people promoting that foolishness. That is not the original tradition of the black people who migrated to those areas. They're practicing the exact same ancestral religious practice, harmonizing with the forces in creation that we practice in ancient KAMIT, KAMIT, and across Afuraitkaitnit. When the whites and their offspring invaded, this is where you get Brahmanism, Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, Taoism, further east in China and so forth, all of this foolishness. So when they promote these ideas of what a twin flame is, they have no capacity to properly define. So we're going to give for the first time the proper definition and its cosmological foundations and its cosmological origins. Not only etymologically, but cosmologically, ritually, and so forth, and how it directly relates to our people. So the term we're using, BAITI, the reason we use that term is because this is the key. So when you look at the image that we use for the broadcast, that image, we're going to work from backwards from the image back into the cosmology. You look at the image that we use to promote the broadcast, you'll see it's composed of a number of different scenes from ancient KAMIT. You'll see one scene, there's a husband and wife, they're kneeling, they're receiving libation from a spirit that is operating within a tree. That's actually the Abosom, the goddess Nut, within her sacred tree. She's pouring libation. They're receiving that libation, that purificatory libation. You see them kneeling and receiving that purificatory libation. Up under that thing, you see another husband and wife in ancient KAMIT. They're seated on their thrones. Next to that, you'll see individually a female receiving that libation from Nut, operating through that sacred tree, her sacred tree, and the female is kneeling and receiving the libation. Next to that is an image of a male kneeling and receiving that libation from Nut, and she's operating through the tree. So we're showing that image because the key is the term Ba, male, Ba'et, female. These are the male and female terms for the spirit. Ba'ti, T means two or dual. So Ba'ti means the dual or double or twin spirit. And here we're talking about the male and the female. Now, first we need to talk about spiritual anatomy. Two major aspects of our spiritual anatomy, the soul and the spirit. First, quickly we'll talk about the soul, then we'll talk about the spirit. The soul is called Ka for males, Kaet for females in the language of ancient KAMIT. It's called Kra in Akan, Ori Inu, in the Yoruba tradition, Selido and Vodun and so forth. The Ka, or Kaet, the soul, is actually a deity. It doesn't just mean breath or animation. It's a deity. That's the difference between what a soul really is and what the misinformation that's been propagated by the whites and their offspring. When you look at this image, you'll see the male and female, the husband and wife. These are actually an ancestor and ancestress in the spirit realm. They have transitioned. They are now in the spirit realm. This husband and wife who are together, in a balanced fashion, harmonious relationship when they lived on Earth. They made their transition. Now they are in the ancestral realm. Before they go to connect and dwell with the other ancestresses and ancestors who preceded them in transition, who are living in the ancestral community, before they get to them, when they first make their transition, the first divinity they see is Het Heru. Het Heru is shown very often as the sacred cow, the sacred kayat, or the sacred cow, emerging from the western mountain range, which is called Mai or Maini, the western mountain range. And you see her head and a portion of her body emerging from the western mountain range. The west is the land of the setting sun. That's the sun is going down into the western mountain range and going into the underworld, so to speak, and then it becomes dark, and then it moves in the underworld during the 12 hours of the night. So in the west, Nebet Amentet, the mistress of the west, this is the title of Het Heru when she emerges from the west. The first force in nature you see when you make transition, your spirit separates from your body. Ra and Ra'et direct Het Heru to come and confront you and align with you when you first transition. Transition can become and manifest as a very trying period. People become disheveled, disconcerted, discordant because of sadness and that stripping away and separating from the physical earth family and so forth. That melancholy, that sadness can create disruption and disalignment and some manifestation of disorder if we're not focused and so forth. So we engage the ritual process, the funerary process, to assist the individual who's making his or her transition to make a smooth transition to the ancestral realm so they don't get caught up in melancholy and sadness and so forth, and that magnetic pull to try to maintain and stay with the earthly family, forcing them to be earthbound, hanging around the place where they died or where they were murdered and so forth, and just hanging around as an earthbound, wayward, transient spirit who can't operate and can't move forward and dwell with the ancestral community. So we have funerary processes for purification to help propel that spirit, empower that spirit to move forward. So the first thing that happens is you come in contact with the force in nature that governs divine beauty. Het Heru. Beauty is a manifestation or a revelation of divine harmony. Harmony is a manifestation of divine order. So if you see something that's in harmony, whether it's a painting or a music, sound, of course, Het Heru governs music, governs art, governs dance, all things that are beautiful. What it really is a manifestation of divine order. When you see harmonious movement, when you see harmonious colors and shapes coming together, when you hear harmonious sounds coming together under the direction of Het Heru, harmony is a manifestation of divine order. When you see harmony, that means order is being manifest. When you see beauty, that is a revelation of that harmony. So Het Heru pulls together complementary opposites in a harmonious fusion. And when those things are pulled together in a harmonious fusion in an innovative fashion, the result is a radiant force that helps to recalibrate us, to realign us with order. If we were disordered, you confront that force in nature that harmonizes, brings harmony and beauty, which is a revelation of that harmony. Then if you were disordered, if you were troubled, if you were spiritually discordant, you come in contact with that powerful force, and she fuses together those complementary opposites and generates harmony, and then that affects you so you can realign with order. So the first divinity that you come in contact with is the divinity of beauty, not just so you can see something beautiful, but because of the radiant force of Het Heru, she helps to recalibrate you towards harmony. And once you're recalibrated towards harmony, you're purified through the goddess Nut, the Abosom Nut, and she's emerging from that sacred tree, and you see the libation being poured out of her sacred vessel. They receive that libation that is purificatory. Just like you use water to purify yourself and pull the physical debris off of your body so you can cleanse your body, so you can operate, in a clean fashion. In the same fashion, if you come into the spirit realm when you make your transition, and you're carrying that residual negative energy from certain kinds of behaviors or habits and so forth, the things that you've accumulated over the course of your life, as well as the negative energetic projections of other individuals that you were interfacing with throughout your life, and you come into the ancestral realm. Your spirit separates from the body is buried and so forth, but your spirit may be still carrying some of that negative residual energy. You receive the libation from Nut for purification, to revivify you, rejuvenate you, but also purify you, just like the physical water will pull off and wash off and rinse off the negative physical debris. The spirit water, utilized by Nut and manifested with the goddess Kebeha or KEHIT, will pull the negative residual energy off of your spirit body, and now you have a light spirit body that's agile and it can operate in a harmonious fashion, won't be held down by the negative weight of perverse energy, perverse residual negative energetic projections or things that have been held on to. So you see them being purified, and once they are purified through that dispensation from the Abosom Nut, once they're purified, then they can go to the ancestral realm. They can go to the pristine ancestral community. Their great-grandmothers, great-grandfathers, aunts, uncles, the people who preceded them in transition from Earth, who have been living as part of the communal ancestral community, and they dwell in that ancestral community for a century or 2 centuries or however long they dwell in the ancestral community. And then at some point, it is time for us to reincarnate, and then we're drawn back into the womb of one of our descendants, one of our great-great-great-great-great-great-granddaughters and so forth, drawn back into the womb of one of our descendants to be born into the world once again. We're drawn out of the ancestral realm, drawn into the womb, born back into the physical world. However, before that process takes place, before we can incarnate or reincarnate into the world, there's another step that takes place, which is very key because it's dealing with the soul. When we're living as ancestresses and ancestors in the ancestral community, and of course in the Akan tradition, the proverb states that if you want to know what Asamando is like, the ancestral realm is like, consider the dream state. When you're dreaming, your body is laying in the dark, motionless, there's no sound, there's no movement, there's no light and so forth, but you are interacting with other luminous entities. You're having a dream, you're communicating with other individuals, interfacing with other individuals, having interaction. If someone walked in the room, they wouldn't see what you're seeing. Your eyes are closed, your body is lying in a dark space, there's no light, no sound, no movement, but you are having interaction. What is the nature of that luminous matter? Why are you interfacing with luminous entities and communicating and hearing and feeling and expressing? It's not, quote unquote, just in the mind or the brain. Your spirit is interfacing with other disembodied spirit. In the same fashion, the after-death state, the body is lying in the dark, buried, and so forth, but your spirit has separated, and now you're interfacing with the disembodied spirits of ancestresses and ancestors and sometimes non-relatives. So we go to the ancestral realm, live amongst, if we live in harmony on a basic level with divine order, then we live amongst our ancestresses and ancestors in that community. That small percentage of our people who did not live in harmony with order, we're not allowed to dwell with the ancestral community. Just like physically here, if you were a criminal and started attacking family members and so forth, you get put out the house. And if you try to come back to the house, you get beat down or killed. So you're homeless, you're a transient, you're out on the street suffering and trying to make it and so forth because you are operating in disorder. And when such an individual dies, their spirit separates from the body, they become a transient earthbound spirit. They attempt to go and dwell with the other ancestresses and ancestors, but their spirits are in disorder. So their spirits are repelled by the larger ancestral community. They can't even get close to that community because it's repelled, because their spirit is out of harmony with the spirits of order. No different, once again, than the two magnets with the same polarities facing. They repel one another. You operate in disorder. You make yourself repulsive to the ancestral community. You make yourself repulsive to the deities. You make yourself repulsive to the Creator, Creatress, as well as the Supreme Being. So somebody becomes a transient spirit, they're hanging around earthbound, harassing other individuals, harassing people, the living, who are walking down the street and so forth, all these different things. But most of our people don't go through that. They go to the ancestral community. They dwell in the ancestral community, in that family, no different than the dream state, dwell there for a century or more, and then it's time for them to reincarnate. Before they return to the womb, the step that they take is they are drawn out of the ancestral realm to Amenet and Amen, the Great Mother, Great Father, the Supreme Being. Now, if you're an ancestor or an ancestress, prior to you making your transition, you were an elder or an elderess, a great-grandmother or a great-grandfather. You had grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and so forth. You had children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, sometimes great-great. They're living in the community. Then you make your transition. And when you make your transition, you go to the ancestral realm. Your children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and so forth, great-great, are pouring libation to you. You come to them in their dreams. You come to them during different junctures in life. When they need some direction, some assistance, you assist them, you help them out, and so forth. They give offerings to you, and so forth. Sometimes there's spirit possession, and you will come through in that fashion. This is taking place generation after generation after generation. You watch your children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren grow up. This happened to our people. This happened to you. When you lived previously on earth, during enslavement, you waged war against the whites and offspring, cut crackers' heads off, escaped from plantations, established independent nations, raised your children, grandchildren in those independent settlements while waging war against the whites and offspring. At some point, you've made your transition, and those living relatives still on earth pour libation to you. You, the great ancestor, you, the great ancestress. You watch your children, grandchildren grow up. You're in the ancestral realm. They're calling on you as a grandparent spiritually. You watch their children grow up. You're the great ancestor, great ancestress. Generation after generation after generation, you're watching your generations grow up. At some point, your great-great-great-great-great-great-granddaughter is born. She grows up. She's pouring libation to you throughout the course of her life. She becomes a full-grown woman. She becomes married, and it's time for you to return as an ancestor or an ancestress. To return, and you're going to be drawn through her womb, so you're going to be born back again in the world for the first time in 200 years. However, before your spirit is drawn into her womb first, the step is that you're drawn first out of the ancestral realm and drawn up to Nyamewa, Amenet, Amen, the Great Mother and Great Father, Supreme Being, Mawu and Lisa, they're called in Vodun, Amenet and Amen in Ancient Kemet, Nyamewa, Nyame and Akan, Olokun, Olorun in Yoruba tradition, Katielio and Kolotielo in the Senufo tradition. Everyone has a proper understanding of the Great Mother and the Great Father who function together as two divine entities as one unit, the Supreme Being. You're drawn to the Great Mother and Great Father, and they give you, assign a deity to dwell with you throughout the course of your life. They direct a deity, a force in creation. If you're a male, they direct a male deity. If you're female, they direct a female divinity to take up residence as a force within your head region. So you're an ancestor or an ancestress, a spirit. You're drawn to Amenet and Amen, the Great Mother, Great Father. They direct one of their children to take up a residence in your head region and guide you throughout the course of your life. That divinity carries within it the specific function you are to execute in creation. As we said earlier, we are cells within the great body of the Supreme Being. If you are supposed to be an immune system cell, and you're children of the immune system deities like Benna and Abena, and Akan, Herubekhudet and Sekhmet, as they're called in Ancient Kemet, Ogu and Ananu, as they're called in Vodun, Ogun and Iyami Abeni, as they're called in the Yoruba tradition, and so forth. They govern the immune and lymphatic system within the great divine body of the Supreme Being. They govern your immune and lymphatic system. Those are the shrines for them within your body. If you are cells or children of those deities, then you're going to be naturally inclined towards immune system functions in society. You're going to be naturally inclined towards executing military functions or policing functions or martial arts functions or defense functions or security functions and so forth. That will be your natural inclination because that's the kind of energy complex and function you have. If you're a child of the excretory system, the deities that govern that mineral balance and fluid balancing system within the great divine body, Nana Akul, who's called Nebuchadnezzar, governs the renal system, the kidneys and so forth, the fluid balancing, mineral balancing system within the body. She governs that within the great divine body, the supreme being. That is the excretory system. That is a healing system, regulating mineral and fluid balance within the body. So you're naturally inclined towards regulating mineral balance and fluid balance in the communal body, and therefore you're naturally inclined towards healing arts and so forth. You have that kind of function. No matter what kind of function you have, it is given to you by the Supreme Being, Amenet and Amen, and it is encoded within the deity that they direct to dwell with you. So if you're an ancestor and you go before the Great Mother and Great Father, they direct a deity to take up residence in your head region. If you're a male ancestor, they direct a male divinity to install himself in your head region. Now you have a force in nature dwelling in your head region that you can communicate with. You can communicate with him. He will show himself to you at some point. At first, it will manifest as a pull in the head region towards certain thoughts, intentions, and actions that are in harmony with divine order and directing you towards your function. If you're an ancestress, a female spirit, then a female deity is directed by Amenet and Amen to take up residence in your head region of your spirit body. And that force installs itself in your head region. And she will direct you. You as an ancestress will be able to communicate with that female deity that is governing your head throughout the course of your life. That divinity has the specific function you are to execute in creation, your divine role in creation, your quote-unquote purpose, what kind of cell within the great divine body you are, and how you are to function and fulfill a role within the created order. That is all wired within that divinity that's dwelling in your head. In ancient Kemet and Kanat, deity that dwells in the head region is called the Ka, if you're male, Kayat, if you're female. In Akan, it's called the Okra, if you're male, Okrawa, if you're female. In the Yoruba tradition, it's called the Ori, Inu, the inner, Inu, Ori, the inner head, inner spiritual head, the deity, the Orisha that dwells in the head region. In Akan, the Okra is the deity that dwells in the head region. In Vodun, it's called the Se Lido, the deity, the Vodou that dwells in the head region. In the Igbo tradition, it is called the Chi. It is the Arusi, or the deity. In the Igbo tradition, the deities are called the Arusi, just like they call Orisha in Europe, they call Arusi in Igbo. And the Arusi, or the deity that's in the head region, is the soul, is called the Chi. That's the deity in the head region. So that's the difference between what a soul actually is and the foolishness you get from the whites and their offspring, whether it's the Hebrew tradition or pseudo, so-called Hebrew tradition, Christian, Islamic, Hinduism, Buddhism, all that nonsense. We have a proper understanding of what a soul actually is. It is an independent deity that has its own existence. And Amenet and Amen tell that deity, you need to go and dwell in the head region of this individual so you can guide him throughout the course of his life. You need to go dwell within the head region of this individual so you can guide her throughout the course of her life. You are to align your thoughts, intentions, and actions with that divinity. That is your divine consciousness. So divine consciousness is not some abstract ideal. Just like in your physical body, you have an organ, an entity with its own form that regulates all functions and has knowledge of all functions of all the organs and cells and glands and so forth in the body. That is the brain, and it's in the head region. In your spirit body, there's an organal structure or force in the head region of the spirit body, the spirit's brain, that has the blueprint of what you are to execute in creation. That is the Ka, that is the soul, that is the deity in the head region. So when you go before Amenet and Amen, you get a soul, you get a deity that dwells with you. Now that that divinity is attached to your head region, Now you can go back to the ancestral realm and await reincarnation. And at some point, your great-great-great-great-great-great-granddaughter copulates with a husband, generates that kind of energy, and draws your spirit into the womb. And then for 40 weeks, you're gestating, and then you're born into the world. So you, the great ancestor, or you, the great ancestress, who used to be inside, or used to be as an ancestor and ancestress, and this is someone that she was pouring libation to, and communicating with, and so forth, all of her life. Now that great ancestor, she is giving birth to, and now is in the form of a child. So when we see our children, we're literally looking at our ancestresses and ancestors, and we treat them as such. We have the responsibility to assist them in uncovering exactly who they are, assist them in aligning with the deity that governs their head region and so forth. So that is the Kayat. And as you grow and develop, that force in the head region is always pulling you towards thoughts, intentions, and actions that are in harmony with divine order and with your function, and pushing you away from thoughts, intentions, and actions that would otherwise place you out of harmony with divine order. As you develop a spiritual relationship with that force in your head, it won't just be a pull. You'll be able to see that deity. He will communicate with you if you're male. She will communicate with you if you're female. You'll communicate with your Ka. You communicate with your Kayat, your Okra, your Okrawa, your Ori Inu, and so forth. So that's dealing with the soul, the divine consciousness, and actual divinity. Now there's another piece that's what we're talking about tonight is the spirit. The spirit is called the Ba. If you're male, the Ba'et. If you're female, it's called Bra Inakan. And we show that etymology and so forth in our books showing that the same terms, Ka and Kra, in Kemet and Akan is Ba and Bra, in Kemet and Akan and so forth. We go into detail about that. It's Bra, Ba, as well as Bra in Akan, it's Ba in Vodun, and so forth. So this is the spirit, the divine living energy that animates us. So the Ka is like the spirit's brain, and sometimes they'll show it as two arms reaching up in the sky and or above the head region and so forth, and sometimes it's shown in the form of the individual itself, but that's the force in the head region, the spirit's brain. But then you have the Ba, and that's the divine consciousness. But then you have the Ba, the divine living energy. Just as you're given a divine consciousness, a specific function to execute in creation, a blueprint about how you are to function in the world, you're not only given a blueprint of what your function is, but the Supreme Being doesn't just give you that. The Supreme Being also gives you a specific energy complex, a specific configuration of energy so that you can execute that function. If you have an immune system function and you have a fiery divinity that governs your head, you need fiery energy so that you can execute that fiery function when you come into the world. If you have a watery divinity that governs your head, and that's the kind of cool magnetic function you are to execute in the world, in the community as a healer, then you need to have an energy complex that has that cool magnetic watery energy so you can execute the function that's wired in your head. It's one thing to have a blueprint. It's another thing to have the power to be able to execute that blueprint. Someone who's a paraplegic has a brain and can think and generate ideas and everything else and plans and so forth, but they don't have the power to execute what they generate mentally. We're given a plan, a blueprint that's governed by the deity in the head region, the Ka, the Kayat. But then, of course, Amen and Amenet give us that power, a specific configuration of energy, power that we can use to execute that function, related directly to that function. That is the Ba, the Ba'et. Where does it come from? That divine living energy is a little portion of the great spirit. Ba and Ba'et means spirit, masculine and feminine. Your Ba, your Ba'et, your spirit is a portion, a child of the great spirit. The great spirit, the masculine spirit, is the creator, which is Ra. The creatress, the great feminine spirit, is Ra'et. This is the creator and creatress. They are grandchildren of the Supreme Being. Amen and Amenet are like the Afurakani male, Afuraitkaitnit female. If you image yourself as the great being, then you're the being, but then you have fiery energy within your body that you can direct to your arms, legs, and so forth, as well as your reproductive organs to create a child and so forth. That divine living energy surging through you, that is your spiritual force. That is your Ra force if you're a male, Ra force if you're a female. But you as Amen direct the Ra force. You as the being direct the energy within you. You as Amenet direct the Ra'at force, the creative force within you. So Ra and Ra'at are subordinate as creator and creatress to the Supreme Being. There's a difference between the Supreme Being and the creator and creatress, which all Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people understand that. Of course, the whites and their offspring do not. And many of our people who follow along with them don't understand that as well. So Ra and Ra'at is the divine living energy that permeates all of creation, that animates all of creation, the divine fire and light, the creative force that is surging through all of creation and making everything living and vital and so forth, full of vitality and so forth. When you receive your Ka and Ka'at, your soul, and it takes up residence in your head region, you're also given a spirit, a child of Ra, a child of Ra'at, a radiant force, a male force if you're male, a female force if you're female, and that force takes up residence in your spirit body. Just like the Ka took up residence in the head region, in the physical sense, your brain is the shrine for the Ka. The Ka is the spirit's brain and so forth. It takes up residence in the head region, but the Ba has a sanctuary within your spirit body, but it is in the heart-lung complex. So you have the heart and lung complex. That is the sanctuary for the Ba, the divine living energy, the spirit. The brain is the sanctuary or the shrine for the Ka, which is the soul. When you look in the imagery we use for the show, you'll see not only the male and female, but you see those two little birds that have the head of the male and the female. That is the Ba for the male, the Ba'at for the female. Why are they shown in the form of birds? When you look inside your body, that little bird is inside your body. If you look at your lungs, those are the folded down wings of the bird. And when you look at your heart, that is the breast of the bird. And then, of course, above that is the neck and the head sometimes is just a bird itself, but sometimes the bird in the symbolism has the head of the male or the head of the female to identify. That is the Ba bird or the Ba spirit or Ba'at spirit that belongs to that particular individual. They're identifying which, spirit it is. But it is a radiant force within you. When you breathe in, of course, and you breathe in air, but that also carries the solar energy, the solar fire that moves through the lungs. When your lungs begin to expand and contract, the wings of the bird begin to fan the flames and so forth. They purify or oxygenate the blood that's moving through the heart, the cardiovascular system. That blood is oxygenated, fired up, and so forth, and then the heart pumps that oxygenated fire blood that carries life force energy to every cell in the body, carries that energy to every cell in the body. So when you begin to expand and contract, your heart is constantly palpitating and so forth, and your lungs are constantly expanding and contracting. So that bird is expanding, contracting, fanning the flames of that divine living fire that's within you. That is the physical seat, but that radiant force, that masculine force is the Ba. The feminine force is the Ba'at. That is your spirit. You can direct that living force to your arms, to your legs, to your reproductive area, to your different parts of your body to affect healing, for example. You can intensify or amplify that energy of that bird. You direct that entity within your being, just like a martial artist can increase their quote-unquote chi energy. The term chi is a title of Ra in ancient Kemet. It is spelled chi. It is also pronounced ki. This is why in Asia they use the term chi or ki, talking about life force energy that is stolen. In the Medut, the hieroglyphs, Ra has the title chi, and it's spelled with the Medut, that dark circle that represents the chi sound or the ki sound, and that's the title of Ra. So just like you can move that energy to break a board and so forth, or through healing practices. You can move the energy through your hands and so forth. When they talk about Tai Chi or Reiki and so forth, which is a corruption of our practices, of course, in the same fashion, you can communicate on a higher level and direct that deity, not just electromagnetic energy from your nervous system that every inanimate object has just by virtue of the fact that it exists. We're talking about a divinity that's dwelling within you that you can communicate with, and they will communicate with you, and you can amplify that divinity's energy within your spirit body and direct that energy to your hands so you can engage the healing process. Direct that energy to your hands so you can procure herbs, plant life, mineral life, and properly not only procure them at the right time, day, night, year, in a certain cycle, but also activate the healing properties of plant life, activate the healing properties of mineral life, activate the healing properties of animal life, and so forth, through amplifying your energy through that force that dwells within you. You can direct that force's energy through the reproductive organs when you're about to bring a child into the world and so forth, generating that kind of magnetism to draw one of those honored ancestresses and ancestors back when you're copulating with your spouse, a purified energetic operation and so forth. You can direct that amplified energy to different parts of your body for defense, for healing, for laying hands to heal and so forth, for divination, placing your hands over different parts of the body of the client so you can read them and communicate with them. You can project your energy beyond the physical body and beyond your aura so you can link your energetic projection with the energetic projection of another Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit human being so you can have a spiritual communication without touching. You can project that energetic, amplification of energetic output towards plant life, animal life, and mineral life so you can connect your energy with theirs and have a direct communication, and we can communicate with plant life, animal life, and mineral life through divinatory processes. You can project and amplify your energy and project it beyond your physical body and spirit body so you can connect with the energetic projections of the deity, and their energy connects with yours, and now there's a bridge of energy between you, and now they can travel across that bridge of energy, that bridge of Ba or Bayat energy, and possess you through spirit possession, as happens in our rituals, and they possess and get inside the body of the person and then communicate with the community. The Abosom possesses, the Orisha possesses, the Vodou possesses, and so forth, and communicates with the people, heals the people, admonishes people when they're making mistakes, encourages what we're doing correct, and so forth. When you utilize your Ba energy, your divine living energy, that bird within you to amplify that radiant force, you connect energetically with all created entities in the world, plant life, animal life, mineral life, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, human life only, as well as the spirits of the ancestresses and ancestors and the deities, because they have that Ba and Bayat energy as well. So we are energetically connected, a web of energy, of divine energy coming from Ra and Ra'et. But that divine little force, that little bird within you, symbolized as a bird because of its form and shape, but it's a radiant force within you, a spirit within you, communicating with that force, amplifying its energy, expanding its energy within you so you can have spiritual communication and empowerment. That's what the Ba is. That's what the spirit is. The Ba for males, Bayat for female. So just like you have a heart and lung complex that keeps you alive, you have a brain that directs all of your functioning that's physical in your spirit body. In the heart, lung region, you have the Ba, the divine living energy that radiates from that region. And of course, it radiates because of fanning of the flames through the expansion and contraction of the lungs, as well as the palpitation of the heart, incessantly, perpetually, constantly fans the flame of that energy. So you have that within the chest region, and then you have in the spirit body, you have the Ka, the Kayat within the head region. So you have consciousness and you have power. You have the blueprint of what your function is to execute in the head region, and the divine power in a specific configuration that allows you to execute that function harmoniously. Now that you have a spirit, a Ba or a Bayat in the chest region of your spirit body, and you have a Ka or Kayat in the head region of your spirit body, you have a soul. Now that you have a spirit and a soul given to you by Amen and Amenet and Ran Ra'et and so forth, then you can be directed when you go before them, then now you're a spirit individual, you're a human spirit that has a divine force in the chest region, which is the Bayat. You have a divine force in the head region, which is the Kakai, the soul. You have a soul and a spirit within your human spirit body. Now you're a full entity. You're not a full entity if you don't have a spirit and a soul. You're just an empty spiritual shell, but once that divinity of the spirit enters your chest region, that radiant force where the heart-lung complex is, once that powerful force dwells in the head region, two deities operating together, the spirit and the soul within your spirit body, now you're a fully formed spirit entity. Now you can go back to the ancestral realm and await reincarnation. And now you as a spirit, soul, individual can be drawn into your descendant's womb, born into the world 40 weeks later and so forth, and then you grow and develop. And if you have culture in place, then those spiritual capacities are revealed to you through ritual process, through purification and so forth. You develop those capacities and you execute your function in creation. If they are not, then there's, of course, a problem. Of course, in this culture, we're raised without that kind of culture, and then we make mistakes. If you look at the other imagery, you will see that the symbolism, the spelling of the term Ba, you see the bird, also the human-headed bird. Those are two variations. Sometimes they just show the bird. Sometimes they show the bird with the head of the human being that it belongs to. And then next to the bird, you see a bowl of burning incense with a flame rising out of the bowl. So that's the Ba, the animate, talking about wings, fire, the flame. The Ba is the animate fire within you. It is a child of Ra and Ra'at, the divine living energy, the animate fire within creation. Ra and Ra'at are the great spirit within creation. The black substance of space is the Ka and Ka'at, the great soul of creation, and that is the divine melanin within the great divine body of the Supreme Being. You have melanin on the outside of your body, your skin and so forth, hair and eyes and all of that, but internally you have neuromelanin, you have melanin governing your, nervous system. In the brain, of course, neuromelanin. You have your cells are dwelling within melanin and so forth. So you have a black substance that's permeating your entire body. And all of your organs and systems are dwelling within that black substance, just like in the black substance of space. That is the great Ka and Ka'at, the great quote-unquote soul, and all the planets, sun, moons, and stars are dwelling within Ka and Ka'at, which we recognize to be a male and female divinity. The whites and their offspring call it dark energy and dark matter, but we know that, of course, it's Ka and Ka'at, and it's male and female dead. You have that black substance throughout your body that peaks in the head region, the neuromelanin, and that is the seat of the brain and the soul and so forth. That's what we have. So you look at the Ba, the bird with the flame. This is where we get this notion of the twin flame. Why is it a twin flame? First of all, you need to understand the spirit itself defined as a radiant, animate fire, and is shown with a flame. Now, when you look at the male and female, you see this male and female who are husband and wife. They were drawn together by Het-Heru, the goddess of divine harmony, and of course, beauty is a revelation of harmony. She fuses together complementary opposites. Before you incarnate into the world and come into the world to execute your function, we know that Afurakani men, Afuraitkaitnit women, we're two halves of a whole. So, of course, we have a function, but our function complements one another. So Het-Heru knows before you even come into the world, and of course, Ra and Ra'at and various divinities know who the person who will be your complement is, and they are in the spirit realm as well. And they have that complementary function. That's your complementary function. So when you are sent into the physical world, you're born in different families, but of course you're two halves of a whole because you have a complementary functions. If you have culture in place, then as you're growing and developing as a child, your parents engage the soul washing ceremony. They purify your head and so forth, and there are rituals that purify your spirit and so forth, your Ba and so forth. And by the time you reach puberty, then you can begin to engage in those ritual purifications as well, just as you see them being purified by the goddess Nut with her sacred libation. You engage that process of ritual ablutions, cleansing yourself, purifying yourself, washing your head, washing your physical body and spirit body so that you can be in alignment. Even though when you make mistakes, engage in self-destructive behavior sometimes, we engage the ritual process on a regular basis, going to our ancestral shrines and so forth, growing and developing as children into adults, learning how to do that so we can purify ourselves on a regular basis, the ritual incorporation of divine law, the ritual restoration of divine balance, so we can purify ourselves and put ourselves back in place, as we said earlier, to align every thought, intention, and action with divine order. So when it's time for us, after we've gone through the puberty rites, manhood and womanhood training, ritually and so forth, and it's just time for us to marry, that is the foundation of a strong family, the foundation of an Omana nation. It is governed by Het Heru and so forth. When it's time for us to marry, because we have engaged in ritual purification since we were children into adulthood, we will be positioned to come across the person who is our divine complement, because we've engaged in those ritual processes. So we'll be positioned and we'll come across that person. We'll know that this is the individual or have an inclination. The Ka will direct us in that fashion. Our Ba will pull us in that fashion and so forth. Het Heru will move us towards the person. Then we'll have an attraction. She governs that central attraction that's the precursor to sexual activity and the replenishment of its harmony. The replenishment of harmony is pleasure and so forth. So she's the force that draws us together. She can draw us together because she already knows the nature of our spirit body. She knows which one of us are complements even before we incarnated in the world. So she can draw us together. She facilitates the fusion of complementary opposites. So we're working in a certain place or living in a certain city, and we're drawn to go to a certain place or move to a certain area. We have an overwhelming urge to get a job somewhere else. She's pulling us and making sure that we cross paths because she knows what our function is individually and how our functions complement one another. She'll draw us through that energetic complex, through the Ba, through the Ba'at, that divine, living, animate fire. So we have that fire burning within us, and she utilizes that fire to draw us together. And she fuses together complementary opposites, and then we cross paths and so forth. And then we engage the ritual process because our Ka, our soul, our Kayat, our soul in the head region tells us, hey, this apparently is the person our Ka is trying to give us that information. Sometimes we're not in tune enough. We get an instinct, well, maybe this is the person. But when we engage the divinatory process and communicate with our Ka and Kayat, we can learn the details. We may get a reading from our grandmother, grandfather, who's a healer, a hoodoo man, hoodoo woman, and so forth, juju man, juju woman, and we get those details and so forth. But we communicate with Het Heru. She pulls us together. Het Heru is Oshun in Yoruba. She's Azili in Vodun. She is Afi in Akan. We invoke her as a divinity on a regular basis anyway. So when it's time for us to get married and we're seeking that, we invoke her, and she makes sure we come together with our complementary opposites. Fuses us together, and once that initiatory fusion takes place, she fuses the fire of the Ba of the male and the Ba'at of the female, and we're drawn together, and we have that fiery arousal and fusion, and we're drawn together and so forth, and that heat of passion, we're drawn together, connected through that fire. That initiatory fusion is facilitated by Het Heru, but then that initiatory fusion is perpetuated. That attraction facilitated by Het Heru is perpetuated through affection, and that is governed by Bast, the cat-headed divinity. When you see Bast, even her name is spelled with the unjuan jar, the so-called perfume or oil jar. But that oil jar in the physical body is the pericardium. It is the heart sac. It is the fluid-filled sac that contains the heart, that stabilizes the heart and so forth. Spiritually, it is the spiritual pericardium of the heart sac, that structure around the heart that stabilizes the heart and perpetuates. So Het Heru draws us together in an initiatory fusion of complementary opposites in harmony, And then vast through the heart region perpetuates that attraction through affection. So that relationship can be maintained through time. Heru draws us together and constantly replenishes that harmony, but then vast perpetuates that harmony through affection. So we did a 4-part series on Bast and her function as the divinity of affection and so forth, and we went into detail about that. But the key here is it is within the Ba'at, that spirit bird dwelling within us, that divine living energy in a unique configuration. If we have a fiery function, we have that kind of force. If we have a watery or cool function, we have that kind of force. If we have an earthy function, we have that kind of energy complex that our Ba carries and so forth. But the Ba itself is literally spelled with the bowl of burning incense with the flame. And when the two, male and female, Afurakani male, Afuraitkaitnit female, man and woman, come together, they become BAITI. BAITI. T means two or dual. The term two or dual in English is from that root, Proto-Indo-European root, duo or duo, and even the term twin comes from twin, or tuo becomes twin and dri. But when you look at the Proto-Indo-European root, it shows jo or dri. That comes from tri or t in ancient Kemet. It does not have a Proto-Indo-European root. They don't know why T or tree, later tween or twin or duo or tuo or two, where it comes from, but it comes directly from this root. In the language of ancient Kemet, that T is dealing with dual. So you have the dual, the tree or tween or twin, Ba or Ba'at, which shows the bowl of burning incense with a flame coming out of it. That is the twin flame, literally, cosmologically, and etymologically. This is the origin of it. It has to do with a deity dwelling within the heart region of the Afurakani man and Afuraitkaitnit women, a divinity that we can direct. It is literally shown in the iconography of a spirit bird with a flame. This is why when you see the man and woman being purified by the goddess Nut, when you look down next to them, they're kneeling, you see two birds. You see their Ba and Ba'at also being purified. When you look on the other images, when the male and female are separate, we just have different images there. You'll see that the male and the female, they're receiving that libation, but then their little Ba bird is receiving the purificatory libation as well. Their spirit energy is being purified by Nut as well. You also see the male and female sitting on their thrones, this ancestor and ancestress, and then you see their Ba birds standing in front of them, male and female standing together. These are a man and woman who are fused together by Heru in a harmonious fusion. They live together, live life in a harmonious fusion, executed their function harmoniously as Ba, T, twin, T, Twi, tween, Ba, or Bai, twin, flame, spirits. And when they made their transition, they continued to function as that Ba, T, or those twin, Twi, Ba spirits, or flame spirits and so forth. And they functioned that way as a couple to emulate in the ancestral realm, still radiating that balanced force of divine balance, and a representative of an ancestor and ancestress who were previously an elder and elderess who lived in harmony with order, a representation to emulate as far as a marriage, a solid foundational marriage. So there are things that take place sometimes when we don't live in harmony with order, because we're dwelling in a culture and we embrace Christianity or some other foolish religion, Islam, Judaism, Hebrewism, Hinduism, pseudo-metaphysics, and so forth. We get knocked off of our path. We don't even know we have a Ka or a Kayat, a deity in the head region, that's the soul that we communicate with. We don't know we have a Ba or Ba'at, a divinity in the heart, lung complex region that we can communicate with and direct that would normally have led us to our complementary opposite. Sometimes instinctively we feel the pull and push and prod and we follow it, but sometimes we feel it, but then the foolishness that we've been indoctrinated with Christianity and Islam and the ideals of this society trump that, and we neglect the pull and push that we feel from the Ka and the Ba, the Kayat and Bayat, and we follow the foolishness. What this society says is beauty. What this society says is the kind of person you need to be with. What this society says, if you're feeling drawn to a certain individual, no, you shouldn't follow that. You need to follow what Jesus is telling you and all this other nonsense. Of course, Jesus doesn't exist. So then we're being pushed towards, by Heru, towards our complementary opposite, but then we miss it. Or we get caught in the traps of this society. Someone falls into drug use and they, end up dying of a drug overdose. And that was your complementary opposite, but now they've made transition. You never even met them in certain circumstances. And you feel a great sense of loss, or the person gets locked up for 20 or 30 years, unjustified charges. You never even met the person. You're a female, the male gets locked up. That was your complementary opposite. You would have crossed paths, but okay, so once again, that the call dropped, so we want to make sure that the call is back up and you can actually hear. And that's what happened last night, but this time it looks like it may be not the same, not as negative. Let me know in the chat room if you can hear clearly. I think we are back on, so if you can hear clearly in the chat room, can you give us a notification? If you can hear on the phone line, hit the number 1. We want to make sure everyone can hear. Anybody on the phone line, if you can hear clearly, hit the number 1. Okay, and you can tap it again. I just want to make sure you can hear. And in the chat room, okay, in the chat room, if you can send a message, let us know if you can hear clearly. Last night when it dropped, once we got back on, it said it was very muffled and we couldn't hear anything, but that's because we had to go through a different process. But this time, hopefully it's back up. So anybody in the chat room who's been interacting in the chat room. Okay, so somebody said that the sound is back on clearly. And the other person in the chat room that had made that message, let me know if you can hear clearly as well. One person said they could, but somebody else had posted a message saying that they couldn't hear. So let me know if you can, now if it's back on, if you can hear clearly. All right, so, okay, so people on the phone line can hear as well. All right, so we're back up. So we're talking about these different instances where something can happen. Just like even someone just in general sense, someone gets married and something happens where their spouse transitions and they're in a young marriage. That does happen, of course. And that could have been their complementary opposite, their divine complement. And then what ends up, because of different situations, different, manifestations of karma, things that have happened in previous lifetimes leading up to this particular lifetime, and certain things transition, and that's something they could not overcome at that particular time. So transition takes place. What very often happens is Heru can draw you to someone else who's gone through the same kind of situation where their divine complement, for one reason or another, is no longer with them. And then you all bond based on that reality. You have that not only in common, but you also share a balanced, energetic, expression, and you come together as close friends, and you balance each other out and so forth, and you can continue in that fashion and have a good, balanced relationship from that point on. That does happen. And both of your divine complements may be in the spirit realm, so you still have a connection to them, but then while you're still here, you have a balanced relationship, a great, strong, foundational, friendly, and balanced relationship, and you may enter into marriage with this person as well. That does take place. But some people, their divine complement may have, got, like we said before, hooked on drugs or something like that, different things that have happened and you feel a great sense of loss to a certain extent because you know the individual exists, but you have not crossed paths, or they've taken a different path and they're just taking you away or taking them away from you. But then there are other individuals who are on the same frequency as you, where their divine complement is also taking themselves away because of their behavior, activities, and so forth, of following the wrong path, and you come together with that individual. You are on the same frequency, even though your divine complements have diverged from you, even before you even got a chance to meet them sometimes, or sometimes you have met them and they have fallen off into self-destructive behavior for one reason or another, but you come together with the person who's on the same frequency, who's suffered the same kind of loss, but then you come together and you have a balanced relationship. That does take place as well. But we also have individuals, of course, who your divine complement is walking around somewhere right now. You have not yet crossed paths yet, but you can feel that sense. We're not talking about just lusting after someone and all of this nonsense about the twin flame thing that you read about, these different certifications and videos and how to find the twin flame. All of that is nonsense. We are born and incarnate through specific matriclans and patriclans. We have deities that govern our matriclans and our patriclans. We communicate with those deities in relationship to your Ka and your Ba, your Kayat and Bayat, as well as Het, Heru, and Bas, and then you can find out from the divinities that govern your matriclan and patriclan the kind of individual that operates on that same balanced frequency as you, because they are operating through related matriclans and patriclans with the same energy complex or balanced energy complex, complementary. And when you communicate with Het, Heru, and Bas, and they communicate with Het, Heru, and Bas, then you find that union through the divinities and your ancestresses and ancestors, because it's already laid out, the blueprint is laid out in your Ka and Kayat. This foolish notion that the person was, shared the same soul and they were two halves of a whole and they were split and so forth, and you're looking for your other half, that's never been the case. As we talked about, the Ka is a deity, a male divinity. It doesn't get split in half. That's foolish. That's like saying you becoming split in half right now. That's foolish. A deity is not being split in half. There's a male Ka divinity, there's a female Kayat divinity. These are two different divinities. So it's not split in half. Your Ba is a divinity. Your Ba'et is a divinity. They're not split in half. We're talking about the fusion of complementary opposites in a workable relationship, a balanced relationship, just like the Afurakani male, Afuraitkaitnit female. So all of these definitions the whites and their offspring have are misinformation. So it is through our ancestresses and ancestors of our specific matriclans and patriclans, and you learn that by communicating through your ancestral shrines who your people are. That is a central institution of learning in ancestral religion, your ancestral shrine. You learn directly how to function in the world, not only as an Afurakani or Afuraitkaitnit person, but one with a specific energy complex who has come through a specific clan affiliation that gives further contour and nuance and definition to you as a spirit. Yes, you're a spirit. You have a Ka or a Kayat, a deity that governs your head region, a certain energy complex. You have a Ba or Bayat, a spirit with a certain energy complex. The Ka and Kayat is the consciousness, the kind of function you to execute. The Ba and Bayat is the divine living energy in a specific configuration, that radiant energy of Ra and Ra'at that's inside of you, that you can amplify. But then you as a spirit entity with a soul and a spirit with a Ka and a Ba, then you move through a specific matriclan and patriclan, a group of people who have been operating in a certain way, had migrated to certain areas of Earth, incorporated the plant life, animal life, and mineral life in those regions of Earth, incorporated that into their bodies and their spirits, the unique expression of the deities in those regions, and how those energies impacted the people's physical bodies, their morphology, their phenotype, and so forth, the way they dance, the way they eat, the way they build, and so forth, affected their culture. The clans were formed, and they have a specific character based on thousands of years of operation through a specific energy complex. So when you are born through a specific clan, that further gives further contour and nuance to you as a spirit soul entity. It gives further definition and uniqueness. And you operate on a certain frequency. And the clan affiliation that you operate through can complement someone else who's come through a clan whose energy complex complements yours. So you have to go through your ancestresses and ancestors because you come through those clans to attune to the frequency of those clans and understand that. So when you come in contact with somebody whose clan affiliation balances yours out, then you can recognize that. And you invoke Het, Heru, and Bast to find out, to make sure, confirm, this is the individual. This is the individual that you directed me to because this is the individual that we were connected pre-incarnation. When we went before Inyamewa, Inyame, or Amen, and Amen, and received the Ka and the Ba, a Kayat and a Bayat, that capacity to be fused together in a complementary fashion, that was already wired within us then. Then we were sent back to the ancestral realm to await incarnation, reincarnation. It was already wired in our Ka and Kayat, the individual that we needed to fuse with. Then we're born into the world. But because of karma, because of things we've done in previous lifetimes, we end up in certain spaces. We're born through certain families, parts of clans, in certain neighborhoods, because we were an ancestor guiding our descendants on earth, but we hadn't cultivated ourselves properly, then we're giving not very good direction as an ancestor, and then we reincarnate into a family that we've been guiding in a haphazard way, and then they're raising us in a haphazard way because we weren't participating in culture when we were previously here, and now we're suffering the results of that, and we end up reincarnating in a family, in a certain situation, in a city, in a certain neighborhood that's not the best situation, and we have a harder time of getting back on track spiritually. That has to do with some of us falling away from certain aspects of culture. It also, of course, has to do with the environment we find ourselves in because we are operating under the cultural influence of our absolute enemies, the whites and their offspring, the spirits of disorder. So we have to contend with the external threat, the whites and their offsprings, but also the internal threat of us falling away from our divine culture. So that causes problems. When we incarnate in certain situations, and we go to certain schools, and we go to certain workplaces and so forth, all based on a cumulative effect of the things that we have done in this lifetime and previous lifetimes, where we have the capacity to overcome all of that negativity to the extent that it exists as a perceived obstacle or a temporary obstacle and so forth whenever we get back involved in our ancestral culture. And then we have the capacity through ritual purification, ahojita, self-purification, to become in tune to the Ka, the deity in the head region, to know what our function is, attuned to the Ba, to learn how to amplify that energy complex we have, stimulate the potency of power that we receive from our patriclan and matriclan divinities so we can use that to execute our function in creation, and also invoke Het, Heru, and Bast so we can come in contact with that individual we need to come in contact with, cross paths with them, and then fuse with them, and then work that relationship out and understand that because of their life experiences and ours, we may be at different places, and we have to work those things out. If we connect with someone else that's out of harmony, we can try to work things out on a regular basis, on a daily basis, but it's not going to be a balanced situation when we connect with the wrong individual. And typically the Ka, the Kayat, the divinity in the head region, tells us in the beginning that this is not the right individual. White culture tells us we shouldn't pay attention to that, and we should just don't judge a book by its cover, and you never know, and all this other nonsense. And even though the deity in your head region has told you this is not the right person, the energy complex within you, your Ba, your divine living spirit, that divine flame, that animate fire within you has repelled the individual because we're following this culture, or Christianity, Islam, or white culture in general and so forth. We get with the person anyway. And then we're trying to force a relationship that never should have been. And the person that's actually our divine complement is somewhere else. We're trying to force a relationship with somebody we shouldn't be with. And then we attribute the breakdown of the relationship to, well, this person has a certain kind of personality, or they were immature, or they were this, or they were that. In reality, the reason why it didn't work out is because we never should have been in it. This is why culture is so important, because when you get involved with culture, you can align with your Ka. You can purify yourself so you can hear what the Ka is directing you or see what the Ka is directing you to do. You can purify your Ba'et, so you have access to that full radiant energy so you can execute your function properly, but also connect and feel that magnetic draw to the person who's your complement. And once you connect with them, you can fuse with them harmoniously without a great deal of conflict. And even if you are, on different tracks to a certain extent, just because of what conditioning, you can break through those conditions. This notion of two spirits coming together, and sometimes there's a separation and then there's a reunion. Once again, we want to give a cosmological foundation for that that's different than what the whites and their offspring talk about. So when all these little stories and these 10, steps of finding out who your twin flame is, all of that garbage, all of that is nonsense. If you're not talking about establishing an ancestral shrine, invoking the Ba, the deity that dwells within you, that divine radiant force, to amplify its power through your ancestral clan deities, if you're not talking about invoking the Ka as the deity in the head region, and cleansing your head on a regular basis at the shrine so you can be more receptive to that divinity and your function in creation, if you're not talking about invoking Het Heru and Bast, then you're not talking about any kind of twin flame anything. This is why we talk about Ba-Ti, the Ti or the Tri, the twin, the dual, Ba, spirit, that's shown as the bird with the bowl of burning incense with the flame arising. We know what a twin flame actually is. So there's a cosmological foundation, however, for that union of the male and female, a somewhat separation possibility, but then a reunion. So we're going to go to a text from Ancient KAMIT, chapter 17 of the Runu Pertinent Heru, the so-called Book of the Dead, Book of Coming Forth by Day, so we can show the cosmological foundation of where this notion comes from, of this dynamic of a twin flame relationship, of a separation and a reunion, which the whites and their offspring cannot give you. Now, one of the whites and their offspring in any of these certification courses or any of this channel, quote-unquote, pseudo-channel material has ever given you this cosmology, because they have no capacity to understand it, because they do not have a Ba. They don't have a divinity that's a child of Ra and Rat dwelling within their heart and lung complex. They do not have a Ka or Kayat. They don't have a deity dwelling in the head region that was assigned to them by Amen and Amenet. They cannot communicate with any divinity. They can't be possessed by any divinity. They cannot communicate with Het Heru, Oshun, Afi. They cannot connect with Bas or any divinity. They don't have a divine complement. That only has to do with people who are connected to deities, which is Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people. They are spirits of disorder. They are cancer cells in the body of black humanity. They are simply disfigured cells moving throughout the body, just like cancer cells, seeking to consume and destroy other cells until their development is arrested and they are eradicated. So anything they have to say about the subject is misinformation. So we're going to look at chapter 17 so we can get a further definition. We're not going to read the whole chapter, but as we go through this, you'll see why we're talking about what we're talking about. So we've already given the original literal iconographic representation of the divine Ba'et, Ba-Ti, the two or the twin flames. The Ba, the male, Ba'et is the female. They're in the ancestral realm. We show the images of the male and female in the ancestral realm. They were fused together by Het Heru and the divine marriage and so forth. They will reincarnate and they will cross paths once again because Het Heru fused them together. Bast perpetuated that fusion through affection. Het Heru facilitated the fusion through that divine attraction and so forth. They have the Ba and Ba'et, that Ba-Ti, that twin Ba, that Twi, twin Ba spirit that manifests through the bowl of burning incense with the flame. That is literally where the twin flame comes from. But now we're going to go into the cosmology to show how it manifests with regard to the relationship dynamics of union, separation, and reunion. Now, chapter 17 of the Runu Perdem Naru, Papyrus of Ani, as well as Nepsini, and then you can find it in Papyrus of Nefer and other papyri as well. So we're not going to go through the whole thing, but in one section, they are talking about, well, we'll just start here. It says, Anech Heratin, which means homage to you, the masters of Ma'at, of right and truth, of divine law and so forth, the divine judges who are behind Alsar, causing to be annihilated defects or isfet, or in the following of the female divinity Hetep Sekus, grant to me that I may come to you. This is the person who made their transition. They're invoking a specific set of deities who are in the following of Alsar, who are behind Alsar. And the person is asking, grant to me that I may come to you. You destroyed the defects. Grant to me that I may come to you, and please destroy my defects, which belong to me, according to that which you wrought for the 7 Aku, or beatified beings, those who are among the followers of their master, the deity Sepa, who Anpu made their place the day that of Ma'ai Arek, which means come therefore there. So what they're saying is there are 7 deities who are behind Alsar. They destroyed the defects, the isfet that was trying to consume Alsar. They were directed by Anpu to operate under the direction of a deity called Sepa. Sepa is shown as a deity, centipede divinity. We did an entire broadcast on Sepa because Sepa's name is used for the Sepat or Sepatu, the 42 Sepatu, or the 42 administrative divisions of ancient Kemet, like 42 states, just like we have 50 states, and then we have a capital, which is Washington, D.C. In ancient Kemet, they had 42 administrative divisions called the Sepatu, and then, of course, they had the capital in Ishtawi or Mennefer, which is, the sacred sanctuary of Ptah and so forth. So they had 42 states plus the 43rd region. That centipede divinity, if you show that centipede right next to the 42 pairs of nerves in the physical body, in the viscera section of the body, is in the exact same form of the centipede with the different legs sticking out. Those 42 Sepatu or administrative divisions of ancient Kemet are the 42 pairs of nerves which regulate all activity in the body. It is in the same form of that centipede. The sternum, of course, is the body of the centipede, and then the 42 pairs of nerves are the legs sticking out from the centipede all around its body. We show the centipede right next to the body and the 42 pairs of nerves, and you'll see this is where it comes from. So it says there are 7 deities, 7 Aku, who are illuminated beings, who Anpu, who mummified Alsar's body. He was the one who did the mummification for Alsar's body, purified Alsar's body, made Alsar's body impervious to decay by mummifying his body and preserving his body. And once Anpu did that, he placed the body of Alsar under protection so the maggots couldn't come and destroy the body and so forth. And Sepa, the centipede divinity, governs the body of Alsar, and he has 7 beatified beings or spirits who work under him to protect Alsar's purified body. So because the individual saw that, he said, listen, you masters of Nebu, masters of Ma'at, of divine law, divine judges who are behind Alsar, causing to be annihilated, Isfet, any negative entity or negative projections that are being projected towards Alsar, these masters of Ma'at, they can destroy those defects. These 7 beatified beings or Aku, illuminated spirits, they can destroy those defects because they're operating under the governance of the centipede divinity Sepa, who's governing the purified body of Alsar. Once his body is purified and wrapped up, now it's pure and it's impervious to decay. It's being protected. These 7 spirits governing the purified body. Already you can see there are 7 forces governing the purified spirit body. This has to do with the 7 karu, or the shrines of deities, the 7 quote-unquote chakras governing the purified spirit body. And they are under the governance of the deity Sepa. Anpu directed that. Anpu did the mummification first, then he placed Sepa, hey, you protect this body, you of the 42 gnomes, you the 42 Sepa, you the 42 administrative divisions, you the 42 sets of nerves that regulate all activity in the body. You're going to protect this purified body. And you're going to be the governor of these 7 beings, the 7 forces that govern the spirit body. This is the origin. And of course, we have our book, Ankh, the Origin of the Term Yoga, Karakasa, the origin and nature of the chakra, proving that the terms yoga and chakra, or Chakra, come directly from ancient Kemet, has nothing to do with Hinduism, and we prove that conclusively in our book. So these are the 7 beatified beings. So the person sees that this is what's happening with Alsara's body. Well, this person's made transition. They want those same 7 deities to protect their spirit body. So when they make transition, they don't want to be pulled and prodded by wayward negative spirits who are earthbound trying to grab and pull at them like cancerous entities. They want to make it to the ancestral realm, make that transition, and they want to make that transition and be able to repel any negative projections from any negative spirit. When we're here on earth, we want those 7 divinities to protect our spirit body, so anybody's negative spirit projections, negative ideas, even negative spirit work that they're trying to project upon us ritually and so forth, we can destroy that. It's fed, destroy that, projection. So he's saying, well, the same ones that protected Alsara's body and were effective doing that, please grant to me that same kind of protection, you masters of Ma'at. Please give me that protection. Destroy my defects just like you destroyed Alsara's defects. This is a ritual prayer to these divinities. And it talks about these are the divinities under the governance of the deity Sepa, because Anpu directed Sepa to govern Alsara's body and working with these 7 divinities. And Anpu did that and put them in their place on the day that's called Ma'ai Arek Am, meaning come therefore there. Then the text says, what then is it? What is this? What are you talking about? Come then there. What does that mean? Then it says these lords of Ma'at, and it gives some further definition and talks about the 7 divine beings, those 7 divine beings of Alsar, Amoste and Hap and Dwamutep and Kepsenowef, which are the 4 sons of Heru, plus Ma'at, Atef, and Keribekef, and Heru, Kinti, Ma'at. So, Kinti and Ma'at. So those are the 7 beatified beings. They're talking about that. So they go into some more detail. We don't have to go through all of that. They list the names of the 7 divinities. They repeat once again, place then Anpu, these 7 deities, as protectors of the Keres, or the encrusted body of Alsar. Then it says Kit Ched, meaning otherwise said behind the pure place of purification of Alsar. Otherwise said these Aku, these 7 Aku, these beatified beings, they show their other praise names, and they give those 7 praise names. Then they say the chief of the divine beings of those of this sacred hall is Heru, the avenger of his father. They show Heru in the text, and he's protecting, his father who has made his transition. And just like Heru protects his father and help facilitate the resurrection of Alsar, we make transition. We want Heru to do the same thing for us that he did for Alsar, to help, quote-unquote, resurrect us in purification and glorification in a purified spirit body that's impervious to decay. Heru has the capacity to do that for his father. We want him to do that for us as well. So we invoke Heru for that. Then here's the key. It says, I am his Ba within the 2 or the twin Cha, the Cha Fi. then the question is asked, what then is it? It says, Alsar it is when he goes into the region of Jedjedu and finds the Ba of Ra in that region. They embrace in that region and come into existence the twin Ba within that region. Jedjedu is a region of ancient Kemet. Later we'll call it Mendes in Greek. Jed is the Jed pillar, so it's the Jed pillars and so forth. But in the physical body, the Jed pillar is the spine. So there's a region in the spine. We just talked about the seven spirits that govern the purified body of Alsar. Now we're talking about the energy in the spine, Jedjedu, the Jed pillar, and the spirit of the Ba of Ra and the Ba of Alsar. The spirit of Ra and the spirit of Alsar meet in the Jedjedu, within the Jed pillar, within the spine, and they embrace, and they unify, and they work together. When they work together within the spirit body, you'll see an image, and we used this image before. You'll see the image of Alsar and Ra operating within the same body. The lower portion of the body is mummified. That is the Alsarian part of the body. The head portion is a flat-horned ram with a solar disk in the middle of the horns. That is the Ra portion of the body. Ra and Alsar are working together in the same body. It's no different than if you were driving in the car and somebody got in the car with you and they started giving you direction on where to go. There's two people in the same vessel. One is doing the driving. One is doing the directing. One is executing the power, regulating the power, the Ba energy. One is giving the directions, the Ka energy. That's the spirit and the soul, the Ba and the Ka. In this context, the Ka portion is Alsar, the Ba portion is Ra. That is the Ba and the Ka united within the spirit body. That's what they're talking about in this text. But then it says, it gives further definition. As concerning the twin Cha, or the Cha-Fi, the twin Cha, the twin spirits, it says the double Ba, the dual Ba. Within the Cha-Fi, the spirit of Ra and the spirit of Alsar, the Ba that is within Ra and the Ba that is within Alsar, it is actually, that the Ka and Ba is united, it is actually the Ba that is within Shu and the Ba that is within Tefnut. And the text stops right there. Shu and Tefnut are the male and female divinities that govern expansion and contraction. They are the two, when they talk about the dual Ba or the BAITI or the dual Ba within that, within the Jed pillar and so forth, the spirit of Shu, the spirit of Tefnut, the dual Ba, the Ba-Ti. Now, Shu is spelled with a feather. And sometimes people say, well, Shu is the air. But Shu also means fire. It's shown with the solar disk spelled in Medusa as fire. So Shu is the expansive force. There's a relationship between fire, Shu, and Shu meaning a feather, a fan, and air, because, of course, in the heart-lung complex, it's all pulled together. The lungs are the feathers of the bird that expand and contract. When they expand and contract, the feathers begin to fan the flames and expand the fire. So there's a unity between the feathers, the fanning, the fire, and so forth. That's why Shu is represented with a feather, with a solar disk, and also air, all of that. Shu, or Shel in Akan, means hot, fire, fiery, and so forth. Shu means hot, fiery, and so forth in ancient Kemet. Then you have the wife of Shu is Tefnut. She is shown as a lion-headed or lioness-headed divinity with a circular serpent on her head. Sometimes Shu is shown as a lion, a male lion, and she's the lioness. Sometimes they are called Shu-Ti, meaning the twin Ti, twin Shu. The Shu not only is feathers, but it's also flame. So Shu and Tefnut are literally the twin the twin T, Shu, or flames. Now there's a story that's called the story of the distant goddess. And there are different iterations of the story of the distant goddess. What happened was Shu and Tefnut are the expansion and contraction in creation. They are the expansive force and contractive force. This is where they get yin and yang from in white culture and so forth. But Atem, the divinity Atem, as well as Asase Nebuchadnezzar, they form the primordial earth. Ptah is the fiery force, and Sekhmet, the fiery force, male and female force at the center of the core of earth when it's being fashioned. The thermodynamics at the primordial earth when it's being fashioned from the inner core and so forth. Eventually that core begins to cool down, and then you have the mantle and so forth, and then the crust and all of that. You have Atem in the Memphite so-called theology, Menepha theology. Ptah fashions the earth. Atem completes or concretizes the primordial molten earth. Atem, along with Asase Nebuchadnezzar, they concretize the primordial earth. Atem is operating as a primordial earth father. Asase Nebuchadnezzar is the primordial earth mother in the context of the planet itself. Geb is dealing with the crust of the earth. That's why I talk about Geb is the earth and Nut is the sky, but he's dealing with the crust of earth. And then his Geb and Nut's children are Asar, Set, and Nebuchadnezzar. They're the black soil of earth. Set is the red soil of earth. Asar is the black soil. Set the river waters. Nebuchadnezzar the rain waters and so forth. But Geb is the crust of earth. But when you're dealing with the mantle, Shu and Tefnu are in the mantle and so forth. The upper mantle, Atem and Asase Nebuchadnezzar are in the lower mantle and all of that. So you have Ptah at the core, Atem and Asase Nebuchadnezzar concretize that they're in the lower mantle, then Shu and Tefnu in the upper mantle, and then they talk about giving birth to Geb and Nut, earth and sky, and Geb and Nut, earth and sky give birth to Asar, Set, and Nebuchadnezzar. Now, for those who are on the phone line, if you want to continue to listen beyond 11 o'clock, you have about a minute left. We're just going to go a little bit over 11, but you need to call in within the next minute or so you can hear beyond 11. Anybody who's just listening online, at 11 o'clock, it will come online. But the people who are on the phone, you can still hear. So 646-787-8155. 646-787-8155. You need to call within the next minute. If you can't call in within the next minute, if you have to go now, thanks for tuning in. The entire broadcast, including the overtime, will be in the archive, and you'll be able to hear the rest of the broadcast, and we're not going to go too much longer. For those who can't stay on, remember this Sunday, June 24th, Ojidamana Fashe, our third annual conference. We're doing with Amaniye Nationism, the Purification of Nationalism, free event here in Washington, D.C., vendors, vegan food, marketplace vendors, presentations on different aspects of nationism. Go to our page and also support our documentary film effort. We are on the last final push, and we're trying to complete the film by the end of this month, so please contribute to the crowdfund. So we're going to finish this piece. So the primordial earth is formed by Ptah and Sekhmet at the core. Then Atem and Asase Nebuchadnezzar fashioning the lower mantle and so forth, and then Shu and Tefnut, the upper mantle, and then Shu and Tefnut give birth to Geb and Nut, the upper crust and the atmosphere. Geb and Nut, earth and sky, give birth to Asar, Set, and Nebuchadnezzar. That is the black soil, the river waters, the red soil, including the desert and red clay, and then the rain waters, Asar, Set, Nebuchadnezzar, then Asar and Set give birth to Heru and so forth, and the various different divinities. This is the unfolding of creation and the different features of creation. But Shu and Tefnut are the expansion and contraction. When that primordial earth is concretized, then Shu and Tefnut, operating through fire and water, expansion and contraction, are manifest through all things that are expanding and contracting harmoniously. They're expanding and contracting in the chest, expanding and contracting within fire, within water, and so forth. When they talk about Shu dealing with fire and Tefnut dealing with moisture. We're not just talking about any kind of cool water. We're talking about those, for example, those hot springs, those thermal springs, that primordial water where steam is rising from the primordial water, where they even find now elements and bacteria and microbes that are millions of years old in those hot springs all around the earth and so forth. That primordial, smoldering water, that fiery water, and of course Shu dealing with that fiery energy and so forth. These are primordial divinities expanding and contracting and fashioning the primordial earth. And then when every being is fashioned, plant life, animal life, mineral life, and Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, human life, the expansive and contractive force of Shu and Tefnut, these twin forces of expansion and contraction are operating within all expansive and contractive movements dealing with vitality in creation. There's a story where Tefnut becomes unhappy with the way things are operating within creation, within the population and so forth, and then she separates. She leaves KAMIT, and then she goes further south into KAMIT, into Nubia. And then there's a breakdown in society. Her energy is missing from society and so forth. The people are wondering what's going on. And then Ra directs Shu as well as Tahuti to go to the south, to go get Tefnut and encourage her to return to KAMIT, to return to the north. And at first she doesn't come, but then at some point, Tahuti as well as Shu convince her to return, and then Tefnut returns to the north. She fuses once again with Shu. Shu and Tefnut come back together, and then balance is brought back to the nation. Now you're going to the south. When you talk about the winter solstice, that's in the south. So that fiery energy is going to the south. That's the darkest time, the shortest day of the year and so forth. When she comes back to the north, the highest point in the sky, the sun, the highest arc, which is this time, which is the summer solstice, there's a reunion of Shu and Tefnut, the reunion of that fiery energy, and now that fiery energy is at its fullest, vigor and so forth, fully manifesting. We can take advantage of that full fiery energy at the summer solstice and utilize that fiery energy to empower ourselves and engage the nation-building process, the nation restoration process. But there's a union of Shu and Tefnut. First she separates and then she returns. And then they reconnect. The two Shu, the Twi or Shu-Ti, Ti or Twi, twin Shu, which means flame. Literally it can be shown as feathers, but it also is shown as fire or flame. The Shu-Ti or the twin Shu, Shu and Tefnut, the twin flames, they separated in different areas. They needed one another, so they came back together so they can unite, so they can engage in the nation-building process. This is the cosmological foundation for that separation and reunion. There's a separation when you're in a balanced state at the equinox. Then there's lesser and lesser solar light until you get to the winter solstice. But then it's time for that energy, that fiery energy, to begin to return, and it's coming back from the south and starts moving towards the north and moves through the evening point, and then it goes all the way to the summer solstice. That's a reunion. Of course, within the spirit body, when they talk about the Jedjedu or the Jed pillar, you have that base of the Jed pillar in the sacral region and so forth. You have that fiery energy down there. You go to the top of the head and then you go back down to the base. You will find that in the cosmology of KAMIT. We're talking about Shu and Tefnut, the spirits, the twin spirits, the twin Ba or BAITI within the Chafi, found within Jedjedu. They're talking about the twin spirits within the Jed pillar. It's literally laid out. So this has nothing to do with Hinduism. We brought this culture into India before Hindus invaded. The term Chakra or Krakra you find in the Medutu and KAMIT. We show that in our book, off the origin of the term yoga. Kara kasa, the origin and nature of the chakra. The term kra kra means anything round, circular, or cylinder. This is why kakara in Sanskrit, kra means anything circular or cylinder or wheel. But kra also means a shrine, just as it does in the Akan tradition. And kra means a shrine or a circle in Akan, but it's a circular structure, a shrine and so forth. Those 7 different kra or kra are the shrines within our bodies, those 7 beatified spirits that govern the purified body of Avsar, that destroy all defects, governed by the deity Sepa and those 7 divinities. That is the spirit body governed by 7 forces, those radiant centers of energy, demarcated by the 7 nerve ganglia in the body and so forth, the physical seats of those, kra or chakra centers and so forth. We go into detail about that in our book, On the Origin of the Term Yoga, Karakasa, the origin and nature of the chakra. But the key here is Shuti, or Shu and Tefnut, the 2 Shu, the 2 expansive forces, the expansive and contractive forces of fire, operating through fire and water, but not cool water, but the smoldering hot springs, the primordial water that formulated and gave birth to the primordial earth and so forth, and life within the primordial earth, the microbial entities that will manifest as the primordial life, expansion and contraction. Shu and Tefnut separated, but then they return. You can separate from your divine function to a certain extent. You can fall away from that, but then when you realign yourself with Tahuti, divine wisdom, under the direction of Ra, then you reunite, realign yourself with your Ka, realign your Ba and your Ka, so there's an alignment with the divine energy you have and the divine function you have. That's internal. But then you connect with the individual whom you're fashioned for and so forth, and there's a fusion there as well. So we're giving the cosmological foundation, not only etymologically, literally, where the twin flames come from. It's the Ba and the Ba'et, the spirits that animate that with regard to nature, are Shu and Tefnut, and that's why they're talked about as these twin feathers or twin flames and so forth. And by the way, Shu and Tefnut become, Shiva, or Shiva is Shuva, and Shiva and Shakti and so forth. That is Shu and Tefnut. Shakti takes the form of Kali, the dark one, which is contractive force, and Shiva, the white one, quote unquote, expansive force. The whites in the offspring would try to say Shiva was a white spirit and Kali was ugly and black and all this other nonsense. But that's Shiva and Shakti, that's Shiva and Kali, that's Shu and Tefnut. That's where they stole the story from. Kali, by the way, is not Sekhmet, so fools are running around talking about Kali as Sekhmet. That's totally inaccurate. Durga in Hinduism is a corruption of Sekhmet. So when Durga is born of the fiery light energy and she's born and comes forward to wage war, that's Sekhmet being born as the eye of Ra, the fiery energy, and comes to wage war and so forth. So Shiva and Kali is Shu and Tefnut. Durga is Sekhmet and so forth, just to clarify that. But that dual flame, that Shuti, or that dual flame, that whole notion of the separation of the male and female who are complementary opposites. Shu and Tefnut are the expansion and contraction, the yin and yang, those original complementary opposites with regard to natural cycles when they separate, but then Ra directs them to come back together under the divine wisdom of Tahuti. Shu and Tefnut come back together once again. The twin flames come back together. They come back together within the Jejedu, within the Jed pillar, within that region and so forth. All of that cosmology is there. Of course, this is going to be part of an upcoming publication, the book and so forth. We just want to lay that out here and show first and foremost and foundationally, when you understand your spiritual anatomy, you know that the Ba, that divine flame spirit within you, is your spirit force, is a divinity in the chest region. Your Ka is your soul. When there's a link between the Ba and the Ka, the spirit and the soul, of the Ba, the Ka, the spirit and the soul, then you're fully functioning. then when you invoke Het Heru through the agency of your own ancestral culture and, approach and invoke Bast under your own ancestral culture and approach, then you can learn from the Abosom, the Orisha, the Vodou, the deities, and the Nananom, Nsamanfo, the Agungun, the Kuvito, your spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors. You can confirm the individual who you need to connect with and you cross paths with, and you begin to make those associations, you make those connections, you build that communication, you work through those conditionings and so forth, and then you build that strong foundation. You establish that marriage relationship that is the foundation for strong families, and of course families are the foundation for a strong Oman nation, and of course we move to AMANSEM, nation building, restoration, and of course, as we said before, we're going to get into those 7 principal values of nation building at our conference, Ujiraman Afashe, on this Sunday, June 24th. If there are any questions or comments, you can hit the number 1 on the phone line. Okay. You can hit number 1 on the phone line if you have any questions, and we're going to take a couple of calls before the overtime runs out. Blog Talk, you typically have a 2-hour show, but you can go into some overtime. It will cut off at a certain point. But before it does cut off, once again, going through the Ojiraman page, registration is required. It's free, as we said, but it is required. We need to have an idea. We need to know exactly who's coming because we do not allow the whites and their offspring in. Of course, we register people, but then we also want to know the numbers that has to do with, the vegan food vendor as well as other considerations as well as far as space. So it's a very quick registration process. You can click the notification in Facebook saying that you're going, but also click on our Ojiraman network. If you're not part of the network, you can sign up really quickly. It's a very simple process. It's just entering your name and email address and so forth. That's our own separate social media network that we use to register for our conferences. It's an alternative to Facebook and other social media who will cut us off and, put you in Facebook jail and all that. We need to have our own alternatives. So the Ojiraman network, you sign up for the conference there, free registration very quickly. So you can do that. And then you also see the details on the page for the presenters and everything else. We'll also be giving away a free copy of our book, Ojiraman Afashe, that's going to be released on that day to everyone who attends. Also, for those who can't stay on, as we said earlier, we are working on our documentary film. About 80% of it is complete. We're aiming to complete the filming within the next 7 days. We said by the end of June, we want to complete the filming so we can release the film finally. So we're at just today, we made 78% of our crowdfunding goal, and because we were able to reach 78% over the past year, this is the reason why we've been able to travel to these different places and film in Florida and Georgia. Florida and New Orleans and Alabama, Mississippi, and these different places. We're still going to Virginia and Ohio. We have a couple more places to film, but 80% of it is done. We've reached 78% of our crowdfunding goals. So if you support the work we're doing, looking forward to the film coming out, we can only get to that place with the support of the community. We don't receive any outside funding, so people's donations are the reason why we've been able to get to 78% and do 80% of the filming. We just need that final 22% so we can complete this process within the next 7 days, or next 8 days, rather. So if you support the work, please go to the fundraising page right now, fundraiser.com/amarukafo_adebisa. You'll see that link on our Facebook page, on our web page, different places. Before you forget, please go to the page now, contribute now. We thank you to the people who recently contributed, people who contribute during the broadcast so we can see the people are, going, because very often people say they're going to contribute and forget because, people have lives. So you get off the broadcast, things are happening at home with the family, you can forget all about that. But we want to get this done. We're at the final stage within the last 8 days with the support of the community. So please go to that now and contribute if you haven't had a chance to contribute, and get out there to everyone who has contributed. So we're going to go to the phone line and take a couple of calls. Michelle, on the phone line number 2843, you had a question or comment? Number 2843, question or comment on the phone line? Okay, hold on one second. Okay, Michelle, on the phone line number 9140, you had a question or comment?
Yeah, hold up, Brother Chrissy.
What's up?
Yeah, I enjoyed the broadcast tonight. Very, very good. I learned about the actual spiritual anatomy of about who we are and stuff like that. But I just want to ask a question related to the Sum Sum. One of the things I wanted to ask is, I've been looking and hearing a lot of the wicks and the offspring talking about leaving their body and stuff like that, right? And I just want to ask the question, is there a possibility that your Sum Sum can leave your body without transition, without death? Because I've been hearing and seeing a lot of these wicks and the offspring, seeing in a lot of videos, through sleep paralysis, they're able to leave their physical body and travel and move like a spirit without having to go through death, which is transition. But they could do that. So I want to answer your question, is there a possibility that your Sum Sum can leave your physical body without transition, without death fully occurring?
Well, what's really happening is the spirit, the Sum Sum, can separate from the physical body, but there's still a link. If you imagine a link like a thread or a cord of energy still connected to the physical body, kind of like somebody, kind of like an astronaut, floating out, spacewalking, but they still have a cord connected. It's that kind of thing. But if that spiritual cord or bond breaks, then that's when death occurs, because there's no connection at that point. But
okay.
In fact, it's kind of like an umbilical cord to a certain extent. So that's what's being talked about. Right.
Oh, okay. I think I get that there.
Whenever we talk about the white and offspring, there's a clear distinction that has to be made. So in Akan, the term for spirit body is the Sum Sum.
Right.
In ancient Kemet, it's the Sahu. So you'll see it looks like a mummified body. That's the spirit body. Just like your physical body is an entity, and then inside the physical body you have all the organs and systems and glands. You have a spirit body, which in Akan is the Sum Sum. In Kemet, it's called the Sahu, which is the Sahu or Sum Sum, and so forth. And within the spirit body, you have the spiritual organs, including Kayat, or the Bayat, and the, Akut, and the Ab, and Hati, and all of that. The difference is the whites and offspring don't have a Ka or Kayat. They don't have a Ba or Bayat, so they have a vessel, but it doesn't have those divine agencies within that vessel. It's no different than a person with their brain missing or their heart and lung complex missing. So, yes, they have a vessel, a vehicle, but they don't have, divine forces within that vehicle. That's the difference between us and them.
Okay. And just one more question. When it comes to another question I have is, when it comes to the Supreme Being, Amunet, I've been having a conversation with people and describing the Supreme Being to them, they're having a lot of trouble understanding, because every time I describe the Supreme Being and say that the Supreme Being is the Great Mother and the Great Father, people will come back and say, well, there's got to be something beyond the Great Mother and the Great Father. It just can't be them. It can't be them. It can't only be them. Somebody had to create them. It's impossible. They couldn't have just come out of nowhere. They just appear out of nowhere. They had to come from somewhere. So I would like to know if you could give some clarification on how we could react to that sort of question whenever I go into a conversation with some of my family members and stuff. When it comes to that point of view, where they will come and ask you and say, well, somebody had to create Amunet. They couldn't just come out of nowhere. I know I never really hear you touch on this in length about how and where, or not really where, but how to explain to people in that concept whenever they challenge you in that interpretation, to try to challenge you to ask where the Great Mother and the Great Father come from, because they couldn't in their opinion, they kind of just come out of nowhere. So they keep challenging you on that, everything. You try to explain it to them in that context.
Well, part of the problem is people, because of their misinformation regarding, a creator, very often they have a creator without a creatress or a god without a goddess. But even if they use the term creator, then they're misinformed because they don't know there's a difference between the creator and creatress and the supreme being. So they have some sense that the creator of the universe, they don't even know about the creatress, but the creator and the creatress of the universe, Ra and Ra'et, that created all things, they do have an, inkling that even those who created all things must have come from somewhere. And that is accurate, because Ra and Ra'et, the mother and father of Ra and Ra'et, are Nun and Nonet, but the mother and father of Nun and Nonet are Amen and Amenet, so Ra and Ra'et are actually grandchildren of the Supreme Being. But since they don't know there are different layers, they think that the Creator and the Supreme Being is the same thing, so they say, well, the Creator must have come from somewhere, so where did they come from? So they're confused because of the misinformation of white culture. So Ra and Ra'et did come from somewhere, Nun and Nunet. Nun and Nunet came from Amen and Amenet, but at some point you go back far enough where you have that entity that has always been, there's no beginning and no ending. And
no
that is
ending, right.
Amen and Amenet, Yahmeh and Yahmeh.
That is the main point I was trying to get to, is what we're really trying to say, what we will say to them in here is that Amen and Amenet have no beginning and no end. They always existed, and even in KAMIT, the word for Amen means permanent, hidden, stable, abiding. It implies to you that the Supreme Being always existed. You understand? And then to that, if the Supreme Being always existed in our culture, then it means that when we were created in were we created in the way or in the fashion to let's try to get my words out, to be like the Supreme Being in the sense that we can't really die. Is that where I'm trying to get to? Like, we can't die like the Supreme Being in that sense. Like, that's like our function. That's how we were created in our being. Like, because I know whenever you hear a lot of these the witches and the offspring talk about Egypt, they say the Egyptians were obsessed with immortality. But that is not, well, we would understand what that is. But I mean, in the sense of, if the Supreme Being is immortal, which in our culture it is, then were we created in the same fashion? Is that what you're trying to say?
Well, yeah. So they will put forward that idea because even with them, most of them don't understand reincarnation. A lot of them think that the people of ancient Kemet didn't understand reincarnation. Some of them would even try to put forth the false idea that people all across Afuraitkaitnit don't recognize the reality of reincarnation that only comes from the Hindus, which is pure stupidity. So if they don't understand that, then in their mind, the only thing they can think about is them being obsessed with immortality and all this other nonsense. A spirit, the spirit is not, we make transition. We go from, the spirit realm to the physical realm. We make transition, go back to the spirit realm. Now, Amen and Amenet can disintegrate a spiritual form or entity whenever they decide that entity is no longer necessary. So that is possible, a disintegration of a spiritual, entity. But when we're talking about rebirth and return, it's the same spirit born, operating in the physical world, transitioning through death, operating in the physical realm, and then going through that process, again. And it's not a notion that we're returning to the world because it's a punishment because we didn't fulfill our spiritual obligations, and once we do that, we don't have to return to the world. That's some Hindu nonsense because the whites and offspring despise the world because they're not a natural part of the world. So they see the flesh is evil, the flesh is weak, the flesh is this. Their flesh is evil, their flesh is weak, their flesh is degenerate and perverse. They don't like being in the physical world. They see that as a punishment because they're not a natural part of that. We recognize, of course, the reality that Asase Afu, Asase Ya, these are the primordial Earth Mother divinities. The Earth Mother is a deity. The oceans animated by deities. The hills and mountains and rivers and streams and atmosphere and planets and suns and moons and stars animated by divine forces. So when we come into the physical realm, it's a privilege to be amongst these divine forces, to execute a function in creation. That's not a punishment, that's a privilege. And sometimes a primordial an ancestor, an ancestress who is spiritually cultivated, they're not coming into the world because they were into a family or a negative situation because they, didn't do what they needed to do, and they have to, continuously grow and develop develop so they can elevate out of here. They're coming because they did do what they needed to do. They did perfect themselves as one of the nanano mpanyinfo and then nanano manzamanfo, and that perfected entity will come back into a clan to help edify and build and strengthen that clan and help assist them towards that proper, functioning in creation. So they're coming because they perfected themselves, not because they did. So all of these foolish ideas are coming from the whites now.
I got to hear what you just said, and that really puts some context into my understanding, because when you said it, it made me understand and look at it in the sense of the reason you put so much emphasis on this aligning with our craft and stuff is because we have to remember that we went before the Supreme Being. Before we came into this womb, we went before the Supreme Being, and we were given a craft to execute. And we don't want to, when we go back before the Supreme Being, didn't execute that function. You understand? Because we have to go back before the Supreme Being again, because we won't come back into the earth before we reincarnate unless we go in front of the Supreme Being again to get another function to execute. You understand? So I don't understand why is it you put so much emphasis on us aligning with our craft, because you know that eventually we will have to face the Supreme Being again to receive another craft to go and execute another function. And if the same way you always put a lot of emphasis on the craft, is because you know that when the time comes for us, when we have to go before the Supreme Being, we have to, when the Supreme Being give us a function to execute, we don't want to go to the earth and don't execute that function, because we are not living up to the Supreme Being and what the Supreme Being give us the function to do. You understand? So we are not listening, we are not obeying the Supreme Being. And then when we go in front of the Supreme Being, when we go in front of the Supreme Being again before we incarnate, I wonder how, if the Supreme Being will be disappointed in us if we didn't execute that function that he gave us, or he and she gave us to execute. And I see why you put so much emphasis on why we need to execute our function, because we have to remember we went before the Supreme Being before we came here. We went before the Most High, the person that created all of this. And we have to remember that we were given a function to execute, and we must execute it. You understand? And I see why you do that, why you put so much emphasis on the craft. So important. Right. Because we have to execute the function that was given to us by Amen and Aminet, the Great Mother and the Great Father. We can't forget that. And I know, and also when you said that Amen and Aminet could disintegrate a spirit, it made me look at it and say, well, if you're not executing your function, you have no purpose being in the world. And then that possibility is there. You understand? If you don't execute your function, you're not executing the functions given to you by the Great Mother and the Great Father, then you're not executing, you're not doing what you were created to do. And that was so important for us to execute our function and live in divine order, because then that possibility wouldn't arrive, where that would be a possibility for happen to us if we would execute our function and live in divine order with the rest of the universe, in the divine line with everything else.
Right, and the key is what happens is when we don't do what we are designed to do, then we create disorder in our lives, create discordance within the lives of those who we're connected to as well, and then that creates unnecessary suffering. No different than just on a mundane level, if you put foods in your body or substances in your body that are not in harmony with the design, then you're going to create disease and suffering and so forth, and that's just self-destructive, and it doesn't make sense. When you have a specific design, a digestive system, a respiratory system, the things you breathe in and the things you consume, there's certain things that need to go in your system and certain things that don't. They're not in harmony. If you don't live in harmony with the way you're designed, then you're going to create problems. If we don't live in harmony with the way our spirits are designed, our spiritual anatomy, if we don't honor that reality, then we're going to create, problems. But yeah, so we appreciate the call. Yedase.
Yep. No problem. No problem.
Okay.
All right, man. Hold tight. Yeah.
Okay, so it's 11:30. We're going to end the broadcast here. Once again, Yerase, we thank you for tuning into the broadcast. Once again, please go to our Ojiramana Fashe page, register for the conference for Sunday. We look forward to connecting with everyone. Of course, this is the last broadcast before the conference. Last time to connect before the conference as far as the live broadcast. So go to the Ojiramana Fashe page for all of the details for that. And please support our crowdfund effort for our film. We want to make this the last 8 days from now until next weekend. Of course, we have, the conference this weekend, so certain things we won't be able to do, some of the filming during that period. But after that, after the conference is done on Sunday, then, between Monday and by the end of the week, we want to finally complete all of the rest of the filming and prepare the film for release. And we can only do that with the support of the community. Yet I'll say for those who helped us to get to the 78%, many people have contributed once or twice or sometimes 3 times to get us to this, to this point. And yet I'll say we thank you for that. But if you're listening now, whether it's the archive, live broadcast, whatever it is, please go to the fundraiser.com, fundraiser.com/Amarukafo, AMARUKAFO _Adebisa, ADEBISA, and any contribution is welcome. So again, Yerase, we thank you for tuning into this broadcast, and Yebeshi Abio, we will meet again. What's up?